polygon mode, and it just happens to be selected. I was having a bit of a practice. Normally it won't be selected, you know, you'll be in model mode or something like that. Okay, so I'm going to come to UV polygon mode, and I'm going to select all of the UV polygons, Control A. Okay, so you can see there I've selected all of the UV polygons, and they're highlighted orange here. Now for every regular polygon in Cinema 4D, there's a matching UVW polygon when you make the object editable. So if it's got one of those tags, a UVW tag, you know, it'll have UV polygons. And in this particular case, the plane object has they're all nicely laid out because the plane object has a built-in UV map that Maxon has set up, and it's very, very nicely laid out. Now, I mentioned before there's a sort of coordinate system, you know, U, V, and W. Up here, the coordinate is 0, 0. One down here is 1, 1. And sort of, if you go beyond that, it just repeats. And that you saw before, it repeats, you know, up here, 0, 1. If you had a point in the middle, its coordinates would be 0.5, try and get a dot, by 0.5. And there is actually a UV point mode there if you go into that mode. So if I selected the point up there at the top, you can see it's like a little bit hard to see. The coordinates for that point are 0 by 0, you know, the one down here, 1, you know, that one down there, 1, 1. If I click on that one there, that'll be, you know, 0.333 by 0.33, and you can see it in the viewport. So this is a different point than a regular point. Now you can actually move it around. So I'll get the move tool and move it around. It won't move in the 3D viewport, but I'm moving it around in the 2D view, and you can see it, the effect it has is it distorts the image, and sort of that's why as you resize your plane object, this material is sort of bonded onto the surface, and as you sort of deform it or make it bigger or smaller, the material gets stretched and deformed to match it, which is very handy in, you know, character animation. Let's have a look at the UV map for a cube. So I'll just come back to standard layout. Okay, standard. I'll delete that plane object. I'll come back into model mode there, get out of UV polygon mode. I'll create a cube and I'll make it editable. You can see at the moment it doesn't have a UVW tag. It has a built-in UV map. Okay, so just make it editable. Now we've got a UVW tag. Come back into body paint layout and into UV polygon mode, Control A. So I've selected all of the UV polygons. Now you remember before when we applied a material with C4D on it, and we might even do that, we'll just apply it. There it is, just apply it. You can see it's applied to every face, and the reason is because the built-in UV map has all of the polygons stacked one on top of each other. If they weren't stacked one on top of each other, you know, you'd get a different effect. So let's just change the UV map around. I just happen to be on the projection tab there. If I click on box and lay them out very nicely so the UV polygons are not overlapping, you can see the effect with that material is, you know, it's quite a bit different. Now I could, you know, modify my material in Photoshop and get it so, you know, I could have the C4D or whatever to match the UV polygons, and you know, you'll do that regularly, but that creates quite a bit more work, and we're going to be spending a bit of time looking at other projection modes, because if you've got a nice object like this, it's easier to use one of the other projection modes to apply your materials that have got textures loaded in. Let's just sort of digress just for a moment. You know, I've got a cube here. Very easy to get a decent UV map just by, you know, clicking on that box button. But let's load in a really complex object, and one that I've used on my models, and one that I've applied a material with a texture on it. I'll pause the video and I'll load it, and we'll have a look at the UV. Okay, so here we go. It's one of my Lego Technic parts, and I've got it selected. I've dragged and dropped the UVW tag into the viewport here, and the UVs, all the UV polygons are overlapping. So with my material, if I just create a material, load it up, and I'll just right click texture channel color from disk, I'll just load in that X one. Okay, I won't make a copy, click OK, and I'll apply it onto it. Complete disaster. You know, I'm getting it repeating. In my models, I've actually got a transfer or a decal applied onto that object. I didn't come and, you know, UV map, and you can see the X there because the UVs are overlapping. You know, it's all over the place on my object, and on my model. And if I just sort of reduce Cinema 4D down, you can see here it is here. There, I've applied a material with an image, and I haven't had to UV map the object to get the material applied correctly. I've applied the material with a different projection. You know, I didn't use UVW mapping, I used one of these other mapping, and in this particular case I used flat, and that's what I want to spend a bit of time on, just going through the other projection modes and how to work with them, because very, very powerful and something you do need to learn how to do. So that's what we're going to spend some time on. So I'll stop the video and we'll rip into it big time with different projection modes. Just before I have a look at using different projection modes, up until now all of the images I've been using have been square in shape, and probably more often than not the images that you'll be using will be rectangular in shape. And I thought it would be quite good to load in a rectangular image and apply it onto a plane object and just see what happens, and that will actually be quite a good introduction to using different projection modes. Let's have a look at the image for a start. So I'm going to come up to Window and click on Picture Viewer. So I just want to use the Picture Viewer to have a look at an image. So just click on the Open File button. Here it is here, C4D Cafe, and just reduce that down. So rectangular image, here's the dimensions down here, 2048 by 1024. So it's twice as wide as it is high. Okay, and I've just done that just for convenience, just for the sake of the tutorial. It doesn't really matter. Okay, so just close that down. I'll create a plane object, change the orientation to -Z, double click in the material manager to create a new material, and then click on the button here, navigate to where I've got the image. So here it is here, C4D Cafe. No, we don't want to make a copy. Close that down, and I'll apply it onto the plane object. Okay, so it's been applied, but it's actually been squashed down. So remember when we were having a look in body paint at UVs for a plane object and a cube, the UV space was square shaped, and because I've got my projection mode there as UV mapping, the image is being sort of squashed to fit that UV space, and it's being squashed to fit the plane because the plane's UVs fit the UV space. So, you know, you can, if you click on the little orange handle, a little bit hard to see, if I drag that, you know, it's being stretched out. That image, the material is sort of bonded onto the surface